What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. And today we are talking about how to reinvent yourself. This seems like the most fitting episode based off what's been happening over the last couple of months, and more recently the last couple of weeks, kind of going all in from being known as this coach or personal trainer or the guy who owns a studio to going full in on this. Do you know what? I don't even know what to call the sort of business side of things, but I guess it's like a studio, media, content creation, marketing agency. I guess there must be a punctual way to say that, but ultimately going in on this brand that we're trying to build here over at Bulletproof Studios. This episode, I think, albeit I'm going to share some of the challenges that I'm going through with changing from coach to business owner or marketer or whatever you want to call it. I think there is something to be said that, or on reflection over the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking to myself, this has actually been harder to do than it was to leave the corporate job and go all in on my coaching business. And there's a lot that's associated with that. Things like guilt, things like, am I doing the right thing? So I know for a fact there's many of you guys out there who will be listening to this and you've got your own passion, your own dream. And potentially when you start pursuing that dream, it ends up evolving into something else. And that was the one piece of advice actually I was given when I first took on this building. And it was the person who owned the property. And this was someone who grew up in council houses, turned his life around, and from a business perspective or a freedom of finances, is doing pretty well for himself. Multi-millionaire and all that sort of stuff. And a question I asked him when I first took the place, I was like, how did you know like what you wanted to do? And his advice back to me was that I thought I would be selling clothes, and what I'm doing now is completely different from selling clothes. So he's got multiple different business properties, construction, all that sort of stuff, right? And when he said that, he goes, you'll start in this place and you might think that you want to run a gym, but don't be married to that idea, because if it evolves and a bigger or better or different opportunity comes along, like, don't be afraid to take that. And it's so weird that he said that, because I remember thinking to myself, I was like, nah, I am going to be a coach. I'm Coach Crosser for life. And lo and behold, 3-4 years later, it's sort of changing up. Now, if you're tuning into this episode and you haven't listened to the previous episode, 2 episodes ago, where I've kind of done a little mini update on where I've been, what's been happening, I suggest kind of go listen to that. But long story short, I've kind of put a pause or a hold on the coaching side of the business to pursue this next part. And in doing so, there's a bit of an identity shift. I wrote down a title for this episode, Reinventing Yourself, How to Change Who You're Known As. I was going to say changing my identity, but I feel a few people may click on that for maybe a different reason. So being known as the coach, being known as Coach Crosser, my friends call me coach, clients call me coach, family, like everyone's always referred to me as coach, and it didn't feel right. Especially in these last couple of weeks when people have been saying those sorts of phrases to me, and I felt like a fraud. And I kid you not, I've had a tremendous amount of guilt of going, I'm not saying what I said I would do. And I've recorded podcast episodes, I'm sure some of the OG listeners, and if we go back to maybe the first 100 episodes and potentially even 100 to 200, you'd have heard me say many times that I'm in this forever. I'm doing this for the long haul. And I want to be honest and transparent with you guys. And albeit this is a chapter in my life where I'm not necessarily pursuing that, but it's still something that I want to kind of share the journey. So being known as the trainer guy and going into this new shift comes with a fair bit of consequences. And I sort of knew some of them, but other things I did not expect to feel. Things like imposter syndrome, things like, the guilt. Honestly, the guilt alone, I kind of expected, only because I've put it out there and I've recorded physical video episodes of me saying I would do this thing forever. And now I feel like I'm going back on my word. And for you guys who paid attention to, I don't know if I'd done an episode on it where I ran 100 kilometers and benched 100 kilos 100 times. The biggest lesson in that sort of stuff, what got me through that, was sticking to my word, right? Saying that I've said I'm going to do this challenge, and regardless of how long this takes me to do, I am finishing this, especially when I got extremely hard about 70k in. So in a way, my identity is, or I'm very proud of that part. And this is all internal judgment. Whether other people think this or not, one, it's irrelevant, and two, most 9 times out of 10, people don't actually care, right? It's just the harsh reality that we're all selfish human beings. And people are obviously more caring than others, but at the crux of it, everyone's got their own story. Everyone is their own main character in a sense. So going through this shift, the imposter syndrome is definitely something that I spoke about many times in the podcast, and I've given a lot of advice to people who have went from the corporate variation or their corporate career and moved over to pursuing their own passion, ultimately kind of running their own business or becoming self-employed. That shift from corporate world to that, imposter syndrome, crushed it, had no problem about it, gave a lot of advice on that, done episodes on how to overcome it. So internally, I know how to overcome this. What I didn't expect was the imposter syndrome that I've been facing, particularly in the last couple of weeks when we've been at events and we're recording. There's other camera guys there, and there's our content creations there, content creators, what's the word? Videographers is the word I'm looking for there. And then I'm thinking to myself, I start judging myself. I'm like, am I doing this right? I don't think I look stupid holding the camera. All the things I know how to overcome, it started to sweep all the way back in. It's been really hard to overcome that. And I mean really hard in the sense of, why is it a thing that I'm even giving any attention to when I've literally, there's a proven formula that when I left the corporate job, it was all about, right, you're never going to be the best when you start, but the most important thing you can do is get those reps in. And that's obviously what the answer to this is here, but I wanted to share that because I know for a lot of you guys are on the fence with maybe leaving your job and kind of doing your own thing. And absolutely, those older episodes where you do feel like an imposter because you are the person in your circle of friends or your family knows you as Mr. or Mrs. or whatever it is that goes to X corporate job, and you want to shift that. In this example, let's say you want to shift that because you want to run your own property business, or you want to shift that because you want to run your own marketing agency, you want to be your own personal trainer, you want to be a personal trainer, you want to be a coach, you want to run your own gym. It doesn't matter what you do, but that shift in identity, that shift on who people know you, or that shift of what people know you as, should I say, is a weird world to be in. But ultimately it comes back to what I said earlier on. It does not matter what other people think. And it's one of the reasons people don't create content or push stuff on social media, post stuff on social media, because they're scared of what their friends may think. And some of the best, me and Jillian were talking about this, we're like, how did we, when you look at our friend circle and our family circle, I was like, what sort of path, we were all on very similar paths. Most of us all went to college and went to uni or went into jobs. And through those jobs, we tried to work our way through that ladder. And I genuinely said to Jill, I was like, why, this is so strange. What do you think the decisions that had led to us actually running our own thing, where do you think that came from? And we've looked back, and the biggest thing I can relate this to was actually moving away to, albeit it was England, it wasn't exactly a million miles away, but moving to a place where no one knew us and it was just us two. That has been one of the best and biggest experiences that we've been able to do, because ultimately no one knew who we were, and it gave us a chance to sort of create our own identities or who we wanted to be known as. Now, albeit in that world we both pursued corporate careers, but that actual example helped us get into the crux of, right, it doesn't necessarily matter where you are in the world. Yes, you're going to have judgment for people who know you from when you were a young age and all that sort of stuff, but ultimately, who cares? Who gives a shit of if it's something you truly want to do, then no, the only opinion that should matter is yours. And I say that, but even that opinion doesn't matter, because if you're someone that's internally judging yourself and being very critical over what you do, you're never really going to move forward with that. So imposter syndrome is a funny one. The next part, or the next sort of hurdle that I've came up against, has been letting go of this version of myself. people are talking about fitness, right? And we may be at an event, or maybe it's a family thing, or whatever it is. And fitness is it's always something that ends up coming into conversation. And it's so hard not to be the coach in those situations anymore. And I'm not saying that I can't give advice or can't weigh in my experience or my opinion on certain things, but it feels so strange because usually these conversations that I would have in these circles, right, would be like an example. We were at a festival that we're recording stuff for, and speaking to one of the guys, and we're talking about like, oh, he's like, oh, I could never run the length of myself or whatever it was, right? We started talking about fitness, and it was on the tip of my tongue to go, I can give you a program. I can give you some sort of coaching advice that can get you back on that, because he was saying that he didn't have structure and he needed structure. And that, to me, honestly, has been probably the hardest weekend of not overstepping the line and going back into my old identity or my old way. And that is extremely hard. So there's going to be examples where when you shift, especially if it's like what I'm doing, like completely different, like the shift from corporate to doing your own thing is one thing. But if you're pursuing your own passion and that's evolved into something else that is maybe in line with what you're doing, or maybe it's something completely different, that's it's a weird balance to find yourself in. One of the most common ones is personal trainers go to gym owners, and becoming the gym owner, they then hire other coaches. And I can imagine the dynamic of the gym owner not wanting to be on the gym, not that they don't want to be on the gym floor, but not being on the gym floor to coach because they have other things that they need to start pursuing. So that's an interesting dynamic. The other one that ends up happening is people have coaching communities and then they start coaching other coaches. And I can only imagine the same thing starts to happen, because you're like, if you truly got into this for the passion that you said it was about, and someone's talking and they kind of need some sort of guidance and help, it's like, right, I'm going to actually refer them to someone. I'm not going to help them through my own coaching means, if that makes sense. So letting go of that is super hard, right? That was really hard. I've had a couple of messages in the last couple of weeks as well, and it genuinely has made me sad to write back to some of these people, and some of them are previous clients, and some of them have just followed me for a while, some of them I know personally, and I've had to write these messages back and say, look, I'm sorry, I'm no longer coaching just now. Definitely going to do something in the future, but right now I'm going to have to say no. And I've always been a yes man, right? And I know like some people may go, you should never be like that. But saying yes to every opportunity is the reason that I'm in the position I'm in. And this is one of these times where I'm like, wow, I need to say no to this. And I really like the phrase that saying no gets you closer to your goal. It's like, it's a deeper yes, ultimately, because turning down those opportunities that, yes, okay, I could bring in a bit more business, have a bit more financial stability, run the coaching as well as the studio side of things. But to the point I said in the last episode or 2 episodes ago, it needs to be an all-in type of thing, because dividing up that time it just isn't working. So saying no on the front end allows me to say yes to the things that are going to pull the biggest lever. And yeah, it's a real interesting one. I'm sure there's a lot of you guys out there that will go through the same. Now, audience-wise as well, this is probably one to talk about. I built a network of people throughout the last couple of years, been known as, like reputation-wise, been known as a good coach, been known as got my own place, do well, worked hard, all that sort of stuff. So in that dynamic, I've attracted other coaches, other business owners, but mostly the business owners see me as the coach. Now, this reputation shift is a very interesting one, because I'm now posting content or changing content that I'm going to post out on my social media. And what I've seen in the last couple of weeks is followers going down. Now, albeit I don't marry how many likes a post get, not that I couldn't care. It's a bit of an indicator of how well a post doing, but it isn't the be all and end all. If I'm happy with the content I've created and I only get 6 likes, I don't care. That's 6 people that's went, here, I really like that. And I don't care if it's me, another account I've got, Fraser and Jillian. Like, it doesn't, and my brother. Like, if that's the 5 people that like it, then so be it. But losing those followers, especially for someone like myself who is a bit of a people pleaser, was a bit of a hit to the ego. So I'm like, That's interesting. Like, people have unfollowed me, but it also makes sense, and it's expected. So when you go through this shift, or when you change this dynamic of what you're known as, so if we take the example, moving from the corporate world, moving over to a coach, the main part you get there is judgment. Now, typically there you would create like a new account. So I go from my personal Instagram page and I go to a page that I create called Coach Crosser. That's expected, that's nothing. But now the page that I've been building a following on, building where people follow my personal, I share obviously my personal journey, my business journey, and my coaching journey. That's the audience that's been built up on that middle section. Now shifting to say, look, I'm no longer doing some of this coaching stuff, which is why some people followed me in the first place. People have unfollowed, and it's a bit of a like fuck that hurt, but ultimately it's going to happen. So this is more for you guys out there that are in your own mix just now. You've built up, like, a very common one I'm seeing just now is a lot of people thought they were going to be property millionaires, myself included. I wrote a bizarre letter to myself of what I would achieve in a year, and the reality is I was more focused on getting this opportunity, coaching, and growing the podcast. So I ticked all those boxes, but what I wrote down for getting involved in property was mental. But anyway, a lot of guys go through these property certifications and courses and whatnot, and the dream is sold to them, and rightly so. Like, there's a lot of opportunities they can have in it, but very quickly some of those guys end up going and doing other things in the property sector, which there's nothing wrong with. But I know for a fact that shift, there's a bit of guilt, there's a bit of shame, and more importantly, it's like, oh, I don't want to create content anymore because I'm meant to be the property guy that buys property, not the property guy that handles the sale or whatever it is, right? So there's been things that I'm like, right, do I post this on my Coach Crosser page, or do I post this on the studio page? And that dynamic, ultimately, again, it doesn't fucking matter, right? It really doesn't. If people are going to choose to unfollow you on your main page, then so be it. But just like when I started that Coach Crosser page, I have to start building up my network again. Now, thankfully, in a way, the sort of connections and network that I've built, people know me, right? People followed me, yes, because I was a coach in the space and there was a lot of relatability, but I'd like to think a lot of people like who I am as a person. So regardless of what I'm doing for career or what I'm doing for my business, it's me that they're following. And that's a really good way of building actually your personal brand. I've never built my brand around my testimonials or my coaching clients, should I say. So I've never been the one to post the transformation pictures or post the transformation journeys, albeit they are fine to do, and each to their own when they're doing it, and my clients have had it and they've tagged me and they've shared it and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of the page, it's always been about, here, my mission is to get you into resistance training. I want you to lift weights forever because I want you to live a stronger and healthier life forever. And that mission still more or less remains the same through the eyes of this podcast. But the side note of that was also sharing more of my life with me and Jill, the studio, what we get up to, the holidays, the different things that we like, my own fitness journey and all that sort of stuff. So the shift on that part shouldn't change too much, but I know for some people, if it's all about transformations, and then you start posting about property, for example, people are going to be like, what the fuck? The only thing I would say to that, though, is it's expected. You're going to see a shift of that. Are you better creating a new page? Are you better just building a different thing up? Well, my advice on the social media side of things is my content creation page, right, for Dale Crosser, that was Coach Crosser and is now not so Coach Crosser. Quite like that play on words. Don't think anyone else even noticed, but anyway, so that sort of part of my social media is all about me and my personal brand, right? And albeit I'm branded as the coach, that's now shifting to maybe the business owner that's involved more in the studio side of things, media marketing, all that sort of stuff. So that's where that sort of sits under. Now, I always had a separate page for Bulletproof Coaching, which was more coaching focused, specifically coaching tips, coaching help, coaching cues, etc. So if you're someone that's in the property space and you are blah, 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 property, I don't know why I'm going with property here, by the way. This can be for anything, whatever niche, insert niche here. You're posting stuff about property. You most likely would have a property page if it's like a business, but what a lot of people do is they bring that property identity under their personal brand. And as I said, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but just know that there is an expectation that when you shift that, or if you look to change that, sometimes you might be better just going, look, I'm shutting down this property page, which is what I've done with the Coach Crosser one. I've just, you can inactivate, is that the word? Is that the right word? Whatever, you know what I mean. So that page just closed down so people can't search it. And it means it's driving traffic back to the Dale Crosser page. Now, I've got a separate page for the studio side of things. It just made sense to branch these out. But in some cases, people will keep that under one umbrella. And if you're in this situation where we're trying to recreate a new identity and it is more of a property branded page, it might be better just to say, look, guys, I'm on this new venture, I'm pursuing this new thing. Most of my following here has been built off property. I'm no longer doing property. I'm doing marketing. For anyone that's interested in marketing, here's where I'm going to be posting my stuff. That is the simple answer. Now, as I was saying, with the environment and network that I've created, there's a lot of crossover. So, and I said earlier, luckily, but I guess sometimes it's just fate. Every one of my peers that are in the coaching circle, etc., I know firsthand some of the things that they experience that it's hard to do. So podcasting, for example, great way of getting testimonials out for your clients, great way of sharing your story, great way of talking about something long form, and a good content creation lever that you can pull in where you record an episode and you have months of content. The flip side of that, and the marketing side, so in a way, the business that I'll now attract maybe some of these peers, some of the guys that I've spoken to before, but there is a caveat here. So if you go down the route and just don't post any content, you just go, right, I'm just going to pursue this new thing. And albeit when you go to post content, you feel guilty, you feel ashamed, you don't want to make a post because you think you're going to get judged. If people don't know that you've shifted, then it's going to be really awkward well, not even really awkward, but you're probably leaving a lot of business on the table by not pursuing people who already know you, trust you, like you, and have a relationship with you. So they're sometimes the easiest clients to then get on. So when you go through a shift, don't feel that it's like starting from zero. That was a point that I had down here. Sometimes it can feel like, fuck, I'm starting from zero. I'm a newbie in this game again. And it doesn't mean it's going to take as long to become successful. But what it does mean is you've already proven the path work through what you've done before. And just because you're changing doesn't mean that part of your journey is a failure. That's probably another thing that I've kind of written to myself, like when I was thinking out loud. I was like, am I a failure if I give up this coaching? Because I'm, like I said in that other episode, 10,000 personal training sessions. It's not that a lot. It's not a lot. Like, it's only 300, 400 odd clients or whatever it was. So do I stay in that for another 5 years and get more reps in, or do I go into this next thing? But ultimately, through growth, you're going to experience changes, and you're going to experience things where you're met with these decisions, and you just have to go for it. Another thing I wrote down was kind of some people just won't get it. For me, it's more around, I guess, the current clients that I had, people that I was working with, because they were the ones that ultimately were the most affected with this. So people won't understand that if you're successful at something, why would you give it up? And there's nothing, I guess, what does success mean to you? And this was the point I tried to make in a couple of episodes ago. Success to me was there was some things that I was pursuing. I was trying to do everything at once, and it ended up leaving me feeling less successful. Success, yes, that can be the money that's on the table, or more importantly for me, it's who am I doing it with and what am I doing with that time. And that time was spread across multiple different things. So albeit I got a lot of energy and a lot of a great feeling when people were coming to me for coaching or coming into group coaching and leaving feeling a buzz. Love that feeling. There's other areas in my life like that didn't feel as good. So people won't understand, and it's not for them to understand, and it's not for you to justify either. It's for you to do right by you. I know this is a common thing that you always hear when people are going through these sort of things is, fast forward life 30 years from now, and when you look back, will you regret not taking the opportunity, or will you regret not going all in on X, Y, and Z, right? 9 times out of 10, the answer is probably yes, right? Right, so into the next part. So what are some of the things that I'm going to do to kind of reframe or reinvent who I'm known as? Well, there's a couple of different factors in here. So there's like these mindset things that I was speaking about there. That's all internal. Some of it is external, but ultimately, the only thing you can control is your own actions towards what you do on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't matter who's saying what judgment you're getting internally, externally. What you choose to do with that is the only power and control that you have. So with that being said, make sure that you choose the right actions that push you forward. Everyone, when you're on this path, you do know deep down, like, you don't need some people need guidance and mentorship and all that sort of stuff, but ultimately you know you best and you know what needs to happen to move forward. So what's some things that you can actually lean into? Well, most of us will have a skill set that's been developed regardless of where we came from, whether it's corporate to your own business or your own business venture to a new business venture. There is a path that's been created, and 9 times out of 10, that path is the way I like to imagine this is like snow tracks. So when it's snowing really bad, one car is driven down the road and it creates these tracks. That sort of path, okay, you might be going in a different direction, but those tracks more or less remain the same. And that's when it comes to these skill sets. So for me, communication, how you attract new business, how you approach your content strategy, regardless of industries, it's more or less the same. Like, it generally is. We want to deliver a service. We want to fix a problem for someone, whatever, in that service, whatever the problem is, right? We want to get business coming in. We want to deliver for that business, rinse and repeat, right? And then that's where marketing comes in. That's where sales come in. That's where onboarding, you start creating your systems. You start getting more efficient. You start bringing in other people to help you out. Regardless of any business, that's sort of the model. Those skills would have been developed in the other part of your business. So think of where you've came from. So the identity that you're known as, even though you might be shifting industries or shifting from coach to mentor or coach to property person, coach to, I don't know, swimming instructor, doesn't matter. But especially if you come from a service-based business. In fact, here's an example. E-commerce is a big thing, right? So people are moving from what they do and then they start selling like Amazon products, like Amazon FBA and all that sort of stuff. If that's your shift in your identity, cool, so be it. But there's the skill sets that you can carry over from that coaching skill to those skill sets, or vice versa. If you are doing this sort of e-commerce selling, there'll be things that you've learned in that world that you can transfer over to the new world that you're pursuing. So just think about what that is and use that as your motivation and your sort of encouragement that, right, this can be done. In fact, there's a point I've not mentioned here. All of this leads down to, or it's particularly in the last couple of weeks, it becomes such a heavy weight on your shoulders because you think there's an excitement, right? So this is how it went for me. So there's been months of, should I do this? Should I not do this? Like anxiety, not even like crippling anxiety, but just being anxious of, if I make this decision, what will happen? Like all these sort of mind racing, coming up with different ideas on what to do, ultimately leading to, right, I'm going to speak to all my clients and I'm going to make the decision. And then from there it goes, right, I'm now going to tell the world that I am now going down this path. And then once that's done, there's this like, there's a shot of excitement. Motivation is super, super high. And I was like, right, I'm ready to crush this. But then doubt, imposter syndrome, just the fear, you feel like you're getting judged, feel like you made a mistake. All of that starts weighing down on you and you think, man, I don't know if I'm confident in this decision that I've made. Looking at what you've done in the past and homing in on those skills to transfer over gives you that confidence, right? Just think about anything that you started for the first time. We're never really good at it at the start, but through repetition, we get better. And that's what I'm super, super grateful with when I'm talking about the analogy of the snow tracks. The path has been sort of, you know what to experience within a parameter, if that makes sense. But you can expect certain things to remain the same when you pursue this path, and that's one of them. Okay, and that leads nicely on to the most important piece on how do you reinvent yourself and change how other people or what other people view you as. Comes down to reps, like I said, repetition, but proving that you're good at it, right? Just showing up. Like the more, the more content you can create around this, the better. So just in the past 2 weeks, I have been to a couple of different gigs, been sharing a little bit more. Still try to build, I guess, my personal brand. So still sharing what I'm doing with my fitness, still sharing what I do with Gel, Cooper, if we're out, whatever. And then bleeding in a bit of that content and say, look, you used to see me coach today. Actually, I'm working on a variety of other things because this is what my pursuit is now. If I do that enough times, that will change how people know me, or how people know me. Terrible with words right now, but you get what I mean. That will change the perception of Coach Crosser, and it will be Dale Crosser runs Bulletproof Studios, or Dale Crosser is part of Bulletproof Studios, whatever. Right. So the content piece is important. The testimonial piece is also important. And there's a part of me here that, albeit Bulletproof Studios and an established business, I'd recommend everyone does this. Do some work for free, right? So I looked at what was coming up, and there was a fitness event, HPX, it was getting run, and I knew someone would be competing at it. And we do a lot of work. He pays a fair amount of money every single month to get his podcast edited, to get content edited, etc. And I thought to myself, right, this is a prime opportunity to go into the fitness scene where there's a bunch of coaches there, there's a bunch of people competing there that go, oh, that's Dale, he's a coach that does Bulletproof coaching and runs Bulletproof Mindset. Going into that environment and going and holding a camera, just that one thing has got a lot of people thinking, Dale's doing something different. And doing that, super, super nervous to do. Felt like a fraud, felt like I shouldn't be here. Actually felt like I wish I was competing, I wish I was doing this other stuff, because it just felt normal to me. But see, that one weekend or that one day of doing that, I got a few messages from people, a few people sharing things, and then we got a few actual inquiries through off the back of it as well. So it was the right thing to do, to show up in environments where normally I would show up in and be the coach, but showing up in those environments from a different field. That worked really well. The other thing is probably testimonials. I guess for me this is a bit different, because it's like I'm going from, albeit I'm doing a lot of the work as well, but I'm going from the exchanging time for money to, I feel like I'm actually operating a proper business now. So I actually don't know how this shows up on the different industries, but ultimately you want to build proof that what you're doing really solidifies the results that you're getting, right? Or solidifies the person that you're trying to be known as. Whether that's the nutrition coach, the personal training coach, whether it's the property person, the e-commerce guy, like whatever it is, like you need to solidify that by doing really good work. And sometimes you might need to take on some work for free. I'm in a fortunate position that there's been a runway created for about a year, 2 years, where it's been a side hustle and that sort of stuff. And actually, that's probably worth mentioning, the side hustle part. There might be a lot of you guys that's in the corporate world and doing a side hustle on the side. And when you go all in on this, you're going to experience everything that I've been speaking about. But more importantly, how do you gain confidence and know that you're making the right decision? I don't think you ever do. You're always going to look back at when times were better and think, is this truly better than what I was doing before? And does it ever go away? Maybe. I guess so, but if you can think long term enough, there's a reason why you're wanting to make the switch in the first place. Hold on to that feeling, because more importantly, that's the drive, that's the vision, that's the dream, that's what's going to push you forward. And looking back, it goes back to the old saying I used to say all the time: we can't drive very far if we're always looking in the rear view mirror, right? So look forward, cling to the hope, albeit the destination of where you're going may change. But that growth and what you're experiencing to go through that, just like get the reps in, experience it for yourself. And if it becomes this here, look, this might happen for me, right? Might do this, might pursue this for the next year or so. And I get to a point, I'm like, actually, I'm going to go back to coaching, because that's like, I get more fulfillment, or I get whatever it is out of that. then guess what? I'm going to have to go through all this again. But now I know I've at least tried. I've done something. Nothing's ever guaranteed in life, right? The only thing that, what's that thing they say? The only thing's guaranteed is death and taxes. Unless you're a business owner, you can do some very cool things to avoid taxes. So there's a, if you need a step to leap from corporate to business owner, then there you go. Right, so we'll close the episode there. I think I covered off everything that I wanted to, but look, I'm still in the middle of it, right? I've not arrived. I think this was an episode I wanted to do ultimately because we are all we all go through certain stages in life and we pursue things, right? Now, actually, I'm going to tie this back to fitness for a sec because you might be someone that's never done marathons, never done sport, never been very active throughout your childhood and your 20s. And then when you're in your 30s, 40s or whatever, and you start becoming the person that goes to the gym, the person who signs up to the events, see, before you sign up or get into the mix of that, or one of the reasons why people don't make the leap to go into the gym is because of everything that I've just spoken about there. Now, I'm talking about it from a career perspective, but when it comes to fitness, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, but I can't do a marathon. I'm not the guy that does marathons. Why not? Like, do you want to do it? Yeah, I'd love to do it. It's like, well, why not? Like we don't need to go straight into the deep end, but we can ease ourselves into this. And there's a lot to be said about the fitness comparison to just life in general. And it's one of the, I say it, I'll always lean on this example or statement that fitness is the catalyst of improving every area of your life. And I don't care what you do with it, but it's one of the reasons that I'm able to be confident in my decision that I'm going to try this thing that I don't know if it's going to work. And that's because I didn't know. I went into the gym, so okay, I'm going to start lifting weights because I want to change how I look. So I'm going to do this event because I want to see if I can do it. And all those little micro adverse situations has led me to being a little bit more resilient and have confidence or blind confidence to go into an area where I guess I have no right being in just now. But that whole statement, I have no right to be here, comes from where? It's usually internal judgment. It's usually external snobs, right? I see it in fitness, see it in coaching. It's like, I can't believe such and such is a coach. So what? Like, something they want to do, let them find their own feet, let them see if it's right for them. I'll close on that. As always, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We're back next week with another guest episode, so stay tuned for that. If you like what we're doing here, that makes no sense at all. What I was going to say, if you enjoyed today's episode and you took a bit of value, or maybe you're going through your own sort of recreation yourself, let me know. I'd love to know what some examples are out there. I imagine there's a lot of you that are going through the whole, I'm not the fitness person, but I want to become the fitness person. So if you want to let us know about your story, let's have a conversation, see if there's any advice I can give, because that's the world that I came from. And I will see you guys on the next one.